Welcome, dear seekers. I'm so happy to have you back on this session for yoga, going deeper into the yoga, and today's session about going deep into the yoga's wisdom. If you remember from the last session, we spoke a little in general about yoga. What is yoga? We spoke about, I will share the presentation so that you can also see what we just to remind yourself. So we spoke about yoga as a science because it also has a hypothesis, it has a practice, and it has the result wherever you put it in a practice. We spoke about yoga as a translation of the word, which means connect. And so the yoga means to connect with different aspects. And like in life, we can connect with the nature, which is like eco-friendliness. We can connect with other people, which is also trying to achieve world peace. We are trying to connect body with the mind to achieve the flow. We are trying to connect mind with the intelligence, which refers to self-awareness. And then we are trying to connect body-mind intelligence with the soul, which is called self-realization in the yoga terms. And in the end, this soul with the higher self, with the source, which is called samadhi. More about it we spoke in the last session. And we also spoke about mind control, how yoga really focuses on mind control. And the yoga scriptures, the yoga sutras, are addressing mind control as the most important part of the yoga. Because asanas in Patanjali Yoga Sutras are mentioned only 4 times, and it has a couple of hundred verses which are speaking only about mind control and how to overcome that mind which tends to lead us in the wrong direction so that we can really achieve what we really want in our life. And we also spoke about yoga Vedanta, or the conclusion of yoga. We spoke about that yoga is trying to revive our old soul's original nature. And that nature we spoke about Sat, Chit, and Ananda, which means that we have this permanence, cognizance, and full of blissness. About this in the last podcast. And that the biggest problem which yoga addresses is that we are in problems in today's world, in existence, because we are covered with avidya, with ignorance. That's why we don't experience that bliss, the cognizance, that permanence. And yoga is trying to remove that ignorance. And that ignorance is being removed, like that amnesia in which we are in today's world, can be removed by revival of the past memories. It can be removed by knowledge. That's why there is Vedic epistemology, which we are going to be addressing in today's session. And also by shock therapy. That's why there are miseries in this world, which are trying to shake us, that we see, oops, this is not the place for us. So all of this I was speaking in the last session. And I also mentioned that I'm sharing this knowledge, which I learned during the yoga teacher training in Govardhan Eco Village, which was taught by amazing teachers like Nimarila Prabhu and others, and so many things I learned there. I really recommend going there if you want to learn more about yoga and becoming yoga teachers. And today we will be going more deeper into yoga itself, and especially with Vedic epistemology, theory of learning in yoga. So yoga speaks about 3 main sources of knowledge. So the first is through pratyaksha, through sensory observations. So this is when we try to perceive the world through our senses, which are imperfect. So we cannot see all the spectrum of colors, we cannot hear all the sounds, we don't see what is behind this wall, we don't, our senses are really imperfect. So we can draw many wrong conclusions if we are trying to perceive the world like that. The second way how we can learn things is through Anuman. Anuman is logical deduction, which means that we are trying to, through our perception and then through logic, we are trying to create the reality. And even sometimes when we perceive good things, we may conclude wrong. Like if we see some big amount of smoke going from some room, we may conclude that the fire is there, but maybe some person is just putting a lot of these incense sticks with this favorable smell in his room, so we can perceive wrong things, like seeing. So by this logic, because we see the smoke. So this Hanuman can also mislead us. And it also misleads a lot of misleads modern science, because we usually have some hypothesis that may be wrong, and then we try to do different things and conclude, and then afterwards we see that the hypothesis was wrong, and then we change things and say, oh, we thought that we knew, and now we knew, now we know. So it's really hard to understand the purpose and the truth of the existence through this. And the third way of learning is Shabda, which means verbal testimony. This verbal testimony, this means that we are trying to seek the knowledge from the authoritative source of the knowledge. This is also what we try to do when we try to learn physics or mathematics or something. We cannot find everything from the beginning. We cannot discover everything from zero. We try to learn from somebody who already knows something. What to say about the purpose of life, what to say about some higher topics. We need to have some guidance there. And we need to have that guidance from the proper source. And that's why Vedas are such kind of source of knowledge. Vedas means knowledge, and not just any knowledge, but like the source of the knowledge. And what's interesting is that Vedas are not just scriptures, but they're considered like a cosmic sound. Para, it comes from this cosmic sound, para, which is permeating the whole existence. And sadhus, or advanced persons in meditation, when they go deep into the meditation, they can connect to that para. And also Vedic scriptures have been written down couple of thousand years ago, and they were existing millions of years ago. We can see from the history books and all the archaeological evidences. And they share us some things that modern science is just discovering, which is really interesting. Because gravity, even though it was discovered in 16th century, it was existing also before. So all that subtle knowledge and all that knowledge that exists is also not just from now, it's already from before. So Vedas are trying to teach those subtle knowledges, and through sometimes mediums of some saints and saintly people who also, not just from the Vedic scriptures, take the source, but also from that para, that cosmic sound which is coming from the Vedas. And in order to, that Vedas are being properly followed, the scriptures that have been given as a manual how to use this creation, there is a parampara. This is the authoritative lineage of living spiritual persons who have realized that knowledge and transmitted through it. Very important is that this lineage should be really self-realized. So if there is a one person who is not qualified, then the knowledge is lost, because he then can manipulate it and shift it. That's why it was really important to have this parampara lineage really carefully followed from the very qualified person to very qualified person. And in order to see, is the person qualified or not, or are the teachings okay, there is also a way to test it through three elements. The first element is through that person who should be self-realized, through the teacher. The second is through the sadhus. So sadhus are fraternity of teachers, not just one person, but fraternity of teachers who are teaching the same thing and who have that also high qualifications. And the third is from the scriptures, from the Shastras. So this is how Vedic epistemology was taught through the parampara system, so that that it doesn't lose its quality. So this is what I just wanted to share. How does Vedic epistemology go? And I wanted to go a little deeper into the topics of Vedic philosophy. And if you see Vedic philosophy, it's trying to primarily deal with avidya and vidya. So with knowledge and ignorance, what we were speaking before. So you can see that any philosophy is trying to try to find the answers on these 5 main questions. So the five main questions, which most of you will also ask yourself, is first is, who am I? Who am I? Am I really this body? Am I this mind? Who am I exactly? The second one is, why am I in this state of existence? Or why is this happening to me? Sometimes people ask why bad things happen to people. So this is the second thing. The third thing is, what is the goal of life? So if I'm already here, so what is the goal of life? And then the fourth one is how to reach my goal. If I already know what is the goal, how to reach there? That's a logic question. And then there is a question of what happens after I reach my goal. And this is really important to see that these questions go from the basics to the most important ones. So they go by levels. And we can see that also different philosophies answer some of those questions and some don't. So some only answer first question, some answer 2 questions, some answer 3, 4, and only rare philosophies answer all the 5 questions. And also in the Vedic philosophy, there is 6 systems that you can find, and not all of them address all the 6 questions, which is really interesting. So just that you have a preview of the whole Vedic philosophy, the first one is Nyaya. So the Nyaya philosophy, this is the theory of logic. And actually from that theory, they don't answer questions. This theory, this philosophy is actually just establishing this epistemology, which we're speaking about. So it's just trying to learn the different knowledges of this world, and they're not trying to find the answers. So if you ask them how to become a poet, a question, they will tell you, don't worry about that. Just learn grammar, just learn different knowledge, and then later on things will happen. You will find the answers. So this is their logic. It's not about answering questions, but about learning things. And they're concluding on your own. The second one, you can see correlations with the numbers. It's because they are answering more questions. So you can see that the second one by Sheshikam, it's called atomic theory, because they are speaking that this world is combination of unique particles and like atoms. So it's very close to science, to modern chemistry. So they're speaking about how there are different chemicals, different atoms, and how this body is like a tube full of chemicals. And interesting is that they say that the life force is a separate one. It's not mixed with all of these other material ones. So that's why they answer on this first question, who am I? They say I'm a life force, which later on they address as a soul. And then there is the Sankhya. Sankhya is the third one, or the second one here. And this is the process of elimination. So they are trying to see, okay, am I this earth, water, what is this life force, this soul actually? And they are defined the whole material nature into 24 material elements, and this one life element, the soul. And they are addressing that the biggest issue is when we identify ourselves with the matter. So this, they call it Purusha, this matter existence. And that this avidya, this ignorance, is leading us to suffering because we identify ourselves with that. And we can see that in modern society because people are identifying themselves a lot with their body, their look, their possessions. They're really suffering because of that. So they're saying, oh, we need to identify ourselves um, with the proper thing. Then the third one is yoga. So this one, philosophy, is the one that we're speaking about from Patanjali. And in order to go deeper into it, we are going to go on a separate slide. I'm going to show you now. So Yoga by Patanjali is addressing this philosophy through three elements, through jnana, vijnana, and viveka. So jnana is knowledge, but it's saying that knowledge is not enough, that realization is really important to realize that knowledge. Not just having knowledge, but realize. But the most important part, due to Patanjali, is wisdom. So what are those aspects and how to reach them? So he's saying that knowledge can be reached by austerity. Not just, it's also by learning the scriptures, but also by performing austerities, because that aspects of us, our true nature, what we're saying, that there is this chit, cognizance, so we can access this power, this knowledge also through the deep, strong austerities of mind, focus, and control. And then realization is realized, learned through the study of the self. So going deeper into oneself and observing, then you can have the realizations. But he is mentioning that wisdom can only be achieved through surrender to the Supreme, Ishvara Pranidhana. So it's really interesting, we will come to that. So this is the basic teachings of yoga that most of yoga schools don't even address. And he's speaking about different 8 limbs of processes, how to go through that. So through these austerities to reach knowledge, he's first addressing the yama, or the social discipline, niyama, or the personal discipline, asana, physical discipline, and pranayama, emotional discipline. So he's addressing these 4 aspects. We mostly speak about asanas and some pranayams in the Western teachings of yoga. But before that comes social and personal discipline in order to prepare our mind, in order to be able to balance it by the asanas and then control it through the pranayams. But then realization comes through pratyahara, sensory discipline. This means retracting the senses inside, not being in the external world, but trying to go deeper into oneself and focusing. So this is how we are going deeply into study of the self. And then the wisdom is being achieved through deep meditation, dhyana, and through samadhi, complete absorption, which is addressing the trance. So this is, I should just go through the preview of the yoga system. This requires a special session to speak about. So we will go that in the next session. And I just wanted to give you the preview. So this is just one philosophy. And this philosophy, like I showed you before, addresses what is the goal of life. So it addresses that we should observe, go deeper, and go through the self-realization to understand who we really are. And then it's not the final one. Then there is a karma mimamsa. Karma mimamsa is really interesting philosophy, and it's there because Patanjali brought this yoga system through a lot of austerities that many people could not follow because of their karmic backgrounds. So they were unhappy that they could not follow it because they wanted to reach self-realization. And because of that background, sometimes we can call it emotional baggage from our childhood, our subconscious affirmations, but also a lot of karmic background. People were not able to do a lot of those austerities. So Karma Mimamsa is teaching us how we can go towards self-realization by some kind of a crunch, karmic crunch, which means that we are trying to do some rituals, and there are Vedic rituals through which we can counteract our bad karma. If we have some bad karma through which we cannot focus and advance in that spiritual realization, then there is different Vedic rituals which can counteract it. So they are usually addressing the many demigods which are there to control this material nature, and which are, their role is to administer this material nature. So by pleasing them in different ways, then you can get some benefits and counteract the past karma. And this Karma Mimamsa is saying that matter is physical manifestation of consciousness. So they're trying through this easy process, uplift your consciousness, purify, remove bad karma so that you can move forward. But this is not the topmost, because they're not speaking what happens after I reach my goal. And many times they are just stuck on some heavenly enjoyments. So Vedanta, the conclusive knowledge, it says that there is many these demigods and ministers, but there is only one supreme truth. So that supreme truth, Param Satyam, which is the absolute truth, it's absolute truth because it's not relative. Like if we say that there is like it's 10:20 in some, it's 10:20. Somebody can say, but it's not. In Australia, it's not now 10:30. It's maybe 4 p.m. So it's relative. It's relative to its place, time, and circumstances. But so absolute truth is true always. So that's why they're trying to reach that absolute truth. And they're saying that only by the grace of the absolute truth, because we are so implicated in this material world, we can overcome avidya. So only by the grace. And they're speaking about one point, that in order to exit the well, when we fell in deep well of ignorance, in order to exit, we need to have a person who is outside of the well, who can help us to come out. So that's why they're addressing those saintly people, those gurus, that parampara, who can help us to move out of that avidya and that ignorance. And they're giving two processes. One is the path of monkey, and the other is path of cat. So the path of the monkey, that's called jnana, which means that you are you know how baby monkeys are being transported. So they catch themselves by their mother, under the mother, and mother jumps and takes them somewhere, but they need to hold themselves. So this Vedanta, the path of the monkey, path of the jnana, is that you give your effort to hold to the absolute truths, that it carries you, that you to the knowledge, and to you are putting your endeavors strongly. And it depends on how you hold yourself strong enough, will you be carried or not. The second path is the path of the cat, and that's the process of bhakti. And that process is, you know how the cat carries its kitten? It catches it by its neck, and then it carries the kitten towards the destination. And it can look sometimes fearsome when the tiger mother catches his small cat, but the mother does it with love, and it carries. So the small kitten doesn't need to be putting any endeavor. So we may think that the path of the cat is easier than the path of the monkey because you don't put endeavor. But what the kitten does, it needs to surrender its false ego. It needs to surrender to the guidance of the supreme absolute truth. That can be sometimes much more harder than holding up to jnana, to knowledge, and putting your endeavor. So that's why it's interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to give you the preview so that you can see how not of all of these philosophies are addressing the answers to all of these questions. So now when we can see that the answer to the first question, who am I? I'm the soul, I'm not this body. And why I'm in this state of existence? Because I am identifying myself with this body. I'm not identifying myself with the soul. And because of that, I am acting in a different ways, which are implicating material nature to bound me even further through the karmic reactions. So I'm doing many things, making some good and some bad things without even knowledge, which is like just strengthening this karmic bondage even further. And what is the goal of life? Then we go further, is to go towards the self-realization, to understand who we really are, to go forward to the path, even to the point of samadhi, full connection and realization with the Supreme. And how to reach my goal? We can go with the austere process of Patanjali, the true yoga system, or we can go through some other, we can use some crunches like this Karma Mimamsa, which is addressing our karmic baggage and removing it so that our path can be more smoother, that we can uplift our consciousness easier. And the Vedanta says that what happens after I reach my goal is that I go out of this material nature and I go to the spiritual nature to have the association of that absolute truth. And it can be in three ways. It can be, but we will not go in that direction now. It can be through its personal form. It can be through his Brahmajyoti impersonal form, or it could be through this over-reverence aspect that some philosophy or spiritual traditions are teaching. And in order to have the whole preview of the knowledge that is coming from these paths, we need to speak also about Vedas. So we'll conclude by addressing the different knowledge coming through these Vedic scriptures. And basically there is 4 Vedas. There is Rig Veda, which is addressing the philosophy. They're very ancient scriptures, written 5,000 years ago, but have been transmitted verbally thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of years ago. And Yajur Veda is about the rituals, how we can lift our consciousness through the rituals. Sama is through the prayers, through the absolute and to different those aspects that we were speaking before. And Atharva is about mystical practices. How through the mystical practices we can manipulate this world and go out of this world, peel off this material existence. Then, aside of 4 Vedas, there is Upanishads. So there is 108 Upanishads, and this is specific philosophical topics. They are also divided by the modes, which we spoke in previous Seeking the Essence, mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness for different kind of people. And there is 11 prominent of those Upanishads. Then aside of the Upanishads, there are Puranas. There is 18 Puranas, and this is philosophical, historical stories. So through those stories, which are not usually, they can sometimes jump in time, those philosophical truths are being shared. And then there is Itihasas, which are chronological, aside of Puranas who are not chronological. Itihasas are chronological, historical stories. Through the historical stories, they're trying to teach us through some examples of people who lived and who existed, all these truths, knowledge, and how we can put them in practice. And then there is some hitas. Those are personal realizations from the saints accessing that para, that cosmic sound of the Vedas. And Mahabharata is there, which is part of Itihasas, and but it's called the 5th Veda. Mahabharata you have heard, and especially because it has in the middle of it Bhagavad Gita, which has 700 verses, through which the whole essence of the Vedas is explained. Because the Vedas are like a huge amount of knowledge that is there. And through those 700 verses, through Bhagavad Gita, we can get the whole essence about different yoga practices, about time, how it functions, about the absolute truth, about us as the soul, about karma, about the material nature. We can find answers on all of these questions spoken by the absolute truth itself. It's really interesting. It's really a powerful book. If you want to know Vedas and you don't have time to study all of them, I really recommend. And there is many different versions of Bhagavad Gitas for many different authors. And the most authoritative one is Bhagavad Gita as it is, from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You can find it in many books, shelves, Amazons, and wherever. If you want to go deeper into the Vedic scriptures, then it's Bhagavad Purana. Bhagavad Purana establishes the conclusions also of all of those teachings through different stories, the most purest teachings about that path of the Vedanta, about the path of the Bhakti. And not just Bhakti, but the purest, pure and unalloyed devotional service. And there is also Isha Upanishad, which is one of the most important Upanishads, which you can also find and read. So if you want to go deeper into the Vedas. So I just wanted to, in this session, show you the preview of the all Vedic knowledge and that you can see about the different philosophies which are in the background of yoga, which are usually not spoken so much in today's world, especially in the West during the yoga sessions. That's why this season is called Journey Beyond the Mat, so that you can see a little more outside of just practicing some physical stretchings, which are good to balance our body. But in order to achieve the true essence of yoga, we need to understand the broader picture. So I hope this was interesting. And the next time we will be going more deeper into those 8 limbs of yoga, which are established by Patanjali, the authority of yoga, who wrote all of these things down. So if there is some questions or something, you can ask now. And next week on Monday at 6 p.m., we will continue with the season.